Wait a second.
And the long reach. Tatum crossover, pull-up jumper. That's good. 50 points for Jason Tatum. It's a 7-point lead. Brooks gets a running start. Bain steps back, three-pointer. Williams, stout defense, threw it to himself. Oh, he's eviscerating the Celtics inside. Wow. But he's got to take it personal. They're going to defend over a small perimeter. Oh, Gary Payton with the flush. Goes right at Bain.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to D from 3, presented by the Athletes Hub. As always, I'm Devin Withers, and I'm joined alongside my good friends, Derek Berger, Isaiah Hansen. Fellas, it's the 20th episode of D from 3. We've come a long way. We've been through almost the entire season now. How are we feeling going into today?
I don't know. I feel pretty good. I know we're about to talk some basketball, and we had some opinions and some things to discuss between the two of us, and we're not going to come to a conclusion today. Of course, tune in. But yeah, I'm excited to grill Isaiah. Do the podcast today.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Like literally one more show and we could drink. Like it's amazing. So.
There you go. Listen, guys, we got a lot to get forward, a lot to look forward to. We're going to talk a little bit about the Mavs and the Warriors and what's been a not so competitive series over in the Western Conference. And then you get just about the opposite. And I told you guys, I'm setting aside a good chunk of time for today's episode to talk about the Boston Celtics coming off of their Game 4 win, 102-82 over the Miami Heat. Going into Game 5, we got a series tied 2-2. I also want to talk about the NBA draft lottery. I want to talk about Isaiah's piece with James Harden. He had a pretty hot take saying James Harden no longer a superstar. So we got a fully packed episode. I think everyone's going to enjoy this. But let's start out west. The Golden State Warriors are now one game away from advancing to the NBA Finals. So, Gary, I want to start with you because at one point in time, it seemed like the Dallas Mavericks were the team that everyone was hyping up, the bandwagon everyone was jumping on with Luka Doncic, and all of a sudden now they're down 3-0. So what's surprising you about this series, and do you think Dallas can come away with really any wins, or is this just a clean sweep?
I think to answer your last question first, I think the idea that Dallas can't win anything, like there's no possible way when they have Luka Doncic on their team, is a little silly. He still is a top 5 NBA player, and I will hold that belief firmly. Don't talk to me. Luka Doncic can basically take over a game if he wants to, and I know that he has in these past couple had very good showings. Of course, you'd like to see a little bit more shot making from the rest of his team, but I think that for the Dallas Mavericks, no team has ever come back 3-0 from a conference finals. I don't think a team has ever come back 3-0 in the NBA period. And now it just seems to me like unless Luka Doncic literally has the greatest playoff series in his entire, of the entire NBA history, it seems like Golden State Warriors are advancing here. But don't think that with a Luka Doncic-led team, you're not going to maybe possibly get a game or two. And now I know a second one kind of sounds crazy. I'm not quite sure. I believe they are playing in Golden State on
Dallas,
the game.
Dallas tonight for
Dallas tonight and then Golden State.
And then back to Golden State. Yep.
So if Dallas does somehow manage to get this game in Dallas at home, I don't necessarily see them getting a game 6, even though I did pick them to win the series in 7. You have to win literally. You have to basically complete a sweep in these next 4 games for even to happen. So sorry, Luka, sorry, Dallas, but you didn't show up like you should have. Really, no one else did but Luka. So yeah, sadly, maybe 1 is basically what I'll answer for you.
Yeah, and Isaiah, you got to be feeling pretty good over there because you've been riding the Golden State Warriors since the beginning of this season. back when we were doing our NBA playoff predictions preseason. So let me ask you this, though. If you're looking at the Dallas Mavericks, this was a team at one point in time. We talked about this a little bit last week. This was a team that shipped out Kristaps Porzingis, and me and Gary were talking, and we didn't even think this was a team that was going to contend this year. So when you're looking back, if you're Mark Cuban or you're someone else in the front office, who do you really blame for the Mavericks' shortcomings if they aren't able to pull off this miracle that Gary mentioned? You have to win the next 4 games to complete.
I think that's the wrong question, because it's not who do you blame, it's who do you thank for getting this far, and that is Luka Doncic. Okay, he is the reason why you even got this far. Nobody, except maybe them, expected them to get this far. So, but now that you're here, you could blame Golden State Warriors and Steph Curry and these guys for just coming out and just taking the hearts out of everybody that's not named Luka Doncic. And by the way, just also I want to mention, yeah, the series is over. Would I put it past somebody like Luka to win 2 games in a row? And by the way, where they play does not matter as long as he's on the court, by the way. So I'm not completely like, okay, tomorrow or the next day's over, but I do expect the Golden State Warriors to win. That said, the Mavericks made the right move, and like it didn't seem like it at first, and it doesn't seem like it now. But they, at their best, have a full game of elite guard play as it stands right now. The only thing is now you're probably going to lose Jalen Brunson. So how do you fill in that gap? Because that is a gap that you need to fill. You need to have an answer for that. I did see a lot of people throwing around, for some reason on Twitter, a lot of Rudy Gobert over for Dallas Mavericks, maybe something like that to get yourself like a big guy in the middle. But it's one of those things. We're prisoners of the moment. Sometimes we see the loss and we're like, man, but in the end, they got farther than anybody really thought they would, except for Luka. He probably is super disappointed right now. He's kicking himself, probably blaming himself, because that's just the type of player he is. But yeah, there's just not much you can do. Like I said, nobody affects a game more than Steph Curry. So that's who you blame.
And what's ironic about this whole entire situation is that I'm looking at it right now, the payroll for the Dallas Mavericks going into next season. Every single player on the Dallas Mavericks is technically under contract if they wanted to do so, except for Jalen Brunson alongside Moses Wright and Theo Pinson. And those are the only 3 players not under contract going into next season. Obviously, you have the team options, the player options, qualifying offers, everything else. But let me ask both of you. We'll start with Gary right here, because this is sort of where we bridge into the next section. And it's a very dangerous question. But, Gary, do you believe that the Golden State Warriors should be favored, assuming that they make it to the NBA Finals, they should be favored over the Boston Celtics and the Miami Heat, regardless of who goes in from the Eastern Conference? Are you taking the Golden State Warriors?
Yeah, I would definitely say that it's probably the Golden State Warriors' opportunity to be the favorite in here. And I apologize in just a moment. I just had somebody walk into my room right now, so I might have to step away for a bit. But before I get there, I would love to just tell you just how much this Golden State Warriors team has impressed me, taking this sweep that they might complete here. They're first in points in the playoffs. They're first in assists in the playoffs. And it just seems to me today that the Golden State Warriors are possibly the title favorites, considering that I'm a Heat fan and I would love to see my Heat team get to the finals, get past this Boston Celtics avalanche that they're going to try to have to overcome. It seems to me that out of the 4 remaining teams, the Warriors, who are 20, and by the way, I just wanted to point this out. Since 2015, the Warriors are 20-9 in series clinching games. And that does include losing 3 straight to the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2016. So that would mean that aside from that series, they are 20-6 all time in game clinching games. And by the way, I think this is also true. Steve Kerr has never lost a playoff series not in the NBA Finals. That's also a really interesting one too, because you see that the Western Conference we've been talking about all year, they might just have the best coach there. I don't personally believe that, but in the playoffs, it seems to happen time and time again. If the Golden State Warriors can get to the finals, I don't see a team like Boston or Miami doing as much as they would want to beat them. I mean, to be honest, Boston is probably the better matchup for the Warriors. If you wanted to have like a competitive series, I think the Miami Heat can kind of have a little bit of an offensive stagnant especially with how good some of the defenses they've had to play these last 2 series. But yeah, it's really it's probably Golden State's chip this year.
Yeah, I don't even need to ask Isaiah's opinion, but I'll ask it anyways. Isaiah, you're pretty much on the same page. Gary's sort of preaching to the choir right now. You're going to take Golden State over regardless, Boston or Miami, whoever makes it out of the East.
I pretty much would retweet everything he said, except for one thing, though. Except for one thing.
Oh, Lord.
Despite what I said last week about the Celtics having the 2 best players in the series, I do want to say he said that he feels like the Celtics would give the Warriors the best fight. I disagree. I think it is the Miami Heat because, look, one thing that Steph Curry has struggled with in the past is high pressure moments, like when LeBron James, comes in and blocks him in the paint, and that was like the moment in the series, and Steph Curry was defeated in that moment. So, do I see a guy on the Celtics that could take the heart out of Steph Curry or Klay Thompson and really put pressure on them? No, I don't. Do I see it in the Miami Heat? Yes, I do. If Jimmy Butler is at his full strength, and they have a lot of depth too. So these are the 2 teams with probably the best depth in the NBA. Of course, I'm going with the Warriors. I would say 6 games. I don't know what it is with the 6-game series, but I'm going with 6 again with Golden State. But I do think Miami Heat would give them the best and the biggest threat if, like, Jimmy Butler comes in there and just roughs up Steph Curry, which he really well could. So
I think you're winning my heart back, Isaiah. I'll be real honest with you. I would love to believe that. I really would. But I think for these last couple of games, you've seen Jason Tatum can just go off whenever he wants. And your guy, Jaylen Brown, getting 40 points. We're not going to look past that, even though it wasn't a loss. But at the same time, are you just spamming the Go Warriors on the bottom?
We got two people saying the same thing. We got Jake and Aaron Roach. Shout out to you.
You dog. All right. Well, I think we're all 3 of us here are probably pro Warriors at this moment. Maybe not you as much, Devin, considering the pain they might have put you through in the past. But I get it. Man, it's cool to watch greatness. It's cool to watch Steph Curry do his thing. And yeah, I really do think that you do have a good point, Isaiah. The Heat are very loaded. They have a good matchup situation with Jimmy Butler. But I just think that defensively and from a modern NBA standpoint, the Celtics probably have a better way to, do what the Warriors do in a way. You know what I mean? Like, the Warriors seem to have this, they're moving the ball a lot. They're not really playing isolation basketball. And although from a couple of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown ISOs here and there, they're doing everything they can to shoot threes as much as possible. And that's the way to beat the Warriors. We almost saw the Houston Rockets do it in 2018. And if it happens again and the shots actually go in, God, if I see the Celtics holding up a championship trophy, I might scream, but it might happen. So
me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
And this is the perfect bridge because once again, like I said before, Game 4 between the Celtics and the Miami Heat, Boston comes away with a 102-82 victory. And it's crazy because some of these games have been very, very close. And on 2 of the 4 games, it's been a 20-point blowout. So you're either getting very close games or you're getting the complete opposite. So going into Game 5, Boston is a 1.5 favorite on the road against the Miami Heat. But Isaiah, I want to start with you because you came away with that absolutely ridiculous take last week about Jalen. Well, I want to ask you now, who has been through the first 4 games the most impressive player in this series, the Eastern Conference Finals?
I'm going to stick with what I said last game, notwithstanding. Okay, look, Jaylen Brown scores 40 points the other day. Who's scoring, and how much did Jason Tatum score? 12. Okay, yesterday, Jason Tatum, or was it yesterday that they played? Yeah, Jason Tatum goes off, and Jaylen Brown has a subpar game. But aside from that, he had 2 24-point games. He shot. I don't have the exact number on my head, but I've been remembering this over and over because I was saving it for this moment. 5 of 9 from 3, and then he went something like 5 of 10 from 3, or 6 of 10 from 3 from the next game. In the first 2 games, scoring 24 points on back-to-back games. Jason Tatum, he's been Jason Tatum, but he did have an off game, and I'm not going to say anything about my prediction my saying of Jaylen Brown being better than Butler because Butler's hurt. Okay, so I'm not going to clean victory over that, though I still believe what I said. In this series, I think Jaylen Brown is the second best player in the series, and he's played like it so far, has he not? Even with the injury notwithstanding, aside from that 40-point game, which Jaylen Brown also had one. And by the way, I'm still picking the Miami Heat to win. I'm a little scared now with Butler playing the way he is. Maybe 7 games now, but yeah, Jaylen Brown has impressed me the most, and because I've been watching him closely. And what argument do you have to say otherwise right now in this moment? First 4 games being taken.
Well, maybe Gary has the argument. Well, let's find out. Gary, I mean, Isaiah makes a good point. This has been a series that has been riddled with injuries. Tyler Hero goes down. Marcus Smart goes down. All of a sudden, you get Jimmy Butler dealing with injuries, Al Horford dealing with injuries. You don't know on a night-to-night basis whether Robert Williams is going to be on the court. So, I mean, from your perspective, he's saying Jaylen Brown. Do you have a different name in mind for the most impressive player during this series?
So when I looked at this question, I'm going to just completely ignore what you just said, Isaiah. I am not going to say, no, God, no. If anything, he has been so disappointing. $90 million for what? 12th man and a couple of mysteries. Anyway, I looked at this question with the perspective of what player did I see and view as a guy who I might not have expected to do as well as he did. And of course, I expected Jimmy Butler to come out in game 1 and drop 41 and absolutely destroy Isaiah's point immediately. And then, we're not going to talk about the rest. Al Horford from Franz Adolfo has a great point. He is doing very well this playoff series. Quick shout out to Robert Williams. He's a great player too. And you could definitely see his impact missed when Bam Adebayo was kicking butt there in game 3. But so just like a quick stat, Rob Williams is holding Bam Adebayo to 8.6 rebounds and assist and a half. Al Horford especially has a lot to do with that as well. But the most impressive player for me this series has been none other than Victor Oladipo. You saw him put down, he led the Heat in points last game. He had a great stat line. He was really the only guy that kind of showed up. He's played tremendous defense when asked on that end of the court. And he's kind of been the Heat's, with Tyler Hero out, he has been the Heat's second creator, second ball handler. And the fact that we got Victor Oladipo in a trade for who? I don't even remember at this point. I think it was Kelly Olynyk. Like the fact that we were able to get, I say we, I'm just, I got to step it back. I'm sorry. I get passionate. I turn into a Heat fan immediately.
It's
the fact that
when I'm talking about my Knicks, so go for it.
It's fair. It's fair. So the way that the Heat were able to trade a couple of pieces that were just basically sitting at the end of the bench into a guy who's giving you legitimate playoff minutes with your second star out in Tyler Hero and the ability to fill those gaps with great shooting, great defense. It's really impressive to see, and I wish that somebody else would have showed up last game, because if they had, we'd have been sitting here talking about, is Victor Oladipo the key piece to unlock this Miami Heat's championship potential? But because Jimmy Butler comes out and shoots 3 of 14, doesn't get to the free throw line, misses both the threes he takes, and has 1 assist, how are you going to sit here as a Heat fan and think that it's going to all be solved next game, especially with Jimmy Butler hurt? Victor Oladipo has become one of the most important players on the Miami Heat, and that's a scary thing to say considering where he was what he was doing just 3 months ago. I think, though, if you're talking about most impressive, it has been a couple of Boston guys that have shown out and played great team defense and, of course, held some Miami stars. But at the same time, I scared. I don't know what else to say.
and that trade a while back ended up being Victor Oladipo as part of a 3-team trade. And in return, it was with Houston, I remember, because it was Kelly Olynyk, it was Avery Bradley, and it was right. And a 2022 pick swap is what it ended up being for Victor Oladipo. But I think that's a great name. Isaiah, we have games 5 and potentially 6 and potentially 7 on the board right here. How do you see the rest of the series? You sounded a lot more confident in the Boston Celtics last week, and I caught you earlier today saying that you think Miami's going to come out on top this series. Are you still just as confident in Boston?
Well, no, remember last week I had Miami Heat winning also. I did say, though, if Boston won game 1, we would go to 7 games. We would go to 7 games. Otherwise, we would go 6. Now I think we're going to 7 no matter what. But before I expand too much, and by the way, Miami Heat is still winning. Yes, I do believe that they're just too strong-willed, and I just trusted Jimmy Butler to get them there. Despite, I just want to ask a question real quick, and I've been waiting and dying to ask this question.
Oh, boy.
Oh God.
I understand the injury. Okay, so I'm not
Mhm.
clowning Jimmy Butler. I'm not claiming victory. But who has been the two best players in this series so far?
Jimmy Butler and Jason Tatum.
Stop it. Stop it.
No.
Stop it.
No,
Based
it's
off the
true.
last two games?
We're not living in a 2-game
gotta
series,
count
baby.
that.
We're in a 4-game
We're-
series. You got to think about the
You
first
gotta
two.
talk about it. You
No, we're
cannot
not playing
say-
in a last 2-game series. This is an ever-changing league,
This
my
is
guy.
exactly. This
Jimmy
is a
Butler is
four-game
just you
series.
admitted it yourself. Jimmy Butler's been injured, but what did he do the first game when he was healthy? He was
And
the
what did
best
Jaylen-
player on the court.
And what
He
did Jaylen Brown
absolutely
do?
dominated that third quarter.
And what did Jaylen Brown do in Game 3?
Lose. Oh no, game 3.
40 points.
Yeah, and he lost.
40. And
And he
Game
lost.
1 and 2, 24. The
No,
only
you're
games that
100%
you have is
correct, my
Game
guy.
4, which
He's
was 8
having great
points.
stats.
Other than that,
He's-
he's played as the second best player in this series.
Because he's
Just
being
as I
guarded by
said.
Tyler Hero. Like, I'm going to be
What did I
real
tell
honest
you what
with
happened
Jimmy
last week?
Butler is
I
getting
said-
all the defensive attention, where Jaylen Brown gets to live off the fact that Jason Tatum is literally the first, second, and third bullet point on the whiteboard.
What did
of the
I say would happen last week? I said that would happen. Exactly.
Yeah,
that.
he gets the.
But
Of
the
course, he gets
focus
to
would
go
be on
off
Jason
because he's
Tatum,
not. Oh, we're
and
gonna.
Jaylen
This is
Brown
just
would
gonna be
the one
circles.
getting the free. Did I not say
We're
that?
just doing circles.
You just said exactly what I said would happen last week, and you're like, no, it's not going to happen. It happened.
No, I know I'm wrong about Jaylen Brown going off. My point is that it's a 2-2 series, and both of the team's best players have been Jason Tatum and Jimmy Butler, and I don't think we can just discredit the first two. I don't think we can discredit the first 2 games of any series, and I don't think we can look at this other than a 2-2 series where we've had blowouts in both of basically all 4 games.
I think you got to take it all into account. And you just mentioned Victor Oladipo was their best player yesterday. I mean, injuries.
I didn't say.
Okay. Okay, you didn't say that, but he did play like their best players, like their best player, like last game. And did he not?
No, he definitely did.
Exactly.
But there were 3 other games where Jimmy Butler was doing a really good
Jaylen
job.
Brown has been consistently number 2, aside from Game 4.
And we're gonna just keep talking about this, Isaiah. Of course, he's been consistently number 2 on his own team because he's. Yes, yes. I would agree with that. My point being is that, like, at some point, you have to realize, Isaiah, that he is not getting near the defensive attention. Yeah, which JB? That's a great point. He has the Al Horford profile picture, so I thought.
No, actually, that's Kobe in a Boston Celtics jersey.
Oh, is it? Oh, that's even more hilarious. I can't see. My screen's so small.
That right there. I don't want to say that.
Yeah, you're getting
Jaylen Brown.
Kobe and a Celtics. Jaylen Brown. Yeah, Jaylen Brown has been turning the ball over a little bit too much. But I think, when you're the second. Oh, also, what is I saw a Twitter. I saw something on Twitter the other day that said, "Is Jaylen Brown the best player in NBA history who can't dribble?" I thought that might have been a little harsh, but it was funny considering. But I'll be honest with you, Isaiah. I do think that, I think we're just gonna have a disagreement on the impact of a second star when it comes to defensive attention on his team. Because at some point, I think personally that it's a lot harder to score when you're the first option and you're the main defensive focus. And then you have the Boston Celtics where their main defensive focus is not the guy that we're talking about. And it's the guy that we might even be worried about third most, considering how good Grant Williams has been from 3 this series and basically the entire playoffs. You have other guys on the court making defensive impacts like Robert Williams and Al Horford. So I don't think necessarily that Jaylen Brown is even he might be the third guy on this Heat's little pinpoint board that they put up on areas of focus for players. I really do think that Jaylen Brown is not the most important player. He's probably the third most important player in the starting lineup. You got Marcus Smart on the other team.
Where's
on
my
Boston,
Uno
bro.
cards at? You
He's
just
the defensive player of the year.
You just pulled the Uno reverse card on what I said last week.
Yes, I did.
Talking about
I did.
Williams being
Jaylen Brown is the third best player on the
Uno
Celtics.
reverse card. The Uno
We're
reverse card.
Uno reverse card. I just came up with this on the spot. Hot take: Marcus Smart is the second best player on the Celtics. Discuss.
Wow. I mean, I just think that's straight up disrespectful if you're asking me, at least.
He won the defensive player of the year.
At one
He has
point
a
in time,
three-point shot
just
now.
remember, I need us to clip where I tried convincing Gary that Marcus Smart was going to be named Defensive Player of the
Yes,
Year, and
Devin,
he
but
tried to
now
argue that Marcus Smart wasn't even in the conversation for Defensive Player
Devin,
of the
but
Year.
now it makes my point better. So of course I'm going to use the stat.
There you go.
That's
There
how
you
it works. Welcome to sports broadcasting.
There you go.
I use everything to my
Debating rule
advantage
number
when
one.
my point is the one I'm trying to make.
And Gary, I want to ask you a follow-up just so we can stay concentrated on this. Isaiah says
Yes.
Miami Heat in 7 games. Do you think this is going to go all the way through 7 games, or are you just straight up taking the Miami Heat no matter how many games it takes?
I have to take the Miami Heat. I might get kicked out of South Beach. But at the same time, I do think it's a lot closer than a lot of people think.
I do too.
That's close.
There are a lot. It could go either way. I would love to say Miami in 7. I would love to say I'm gonna go see an NBA Finals game in Miami, which I want to do. Finances pending. But I've definitely made a bet with my roommate that if Miami does win the championship, we are going to Miami to that parade, and I will do a live takes from 3 by myself if need be, because I will be not only having a great time, but there will definitely be some hot takes said about some certain players.
Get the Warriors.
Anyway,
let's go Miami Heat. I want to see that.
Oh yeah, come on. If the Heat beat the anyway, we're getting way too far. Anyway, I do think this series is a lot closer than people think, and I do think that 7 games you could basically toss a coin, and you could tell me that I think Boston's gonna win it, and I'd be like, yeah, sure, yeah, that makes sense. And you could tell me Miami's gonna win it. I personally am gonna go Miami because I believe in my guys, but it's tough.
I don't know. I think I might be the only one on this panel that might be, as a Lakers fan, and it sickens me to say this, I might be taking the Boston Celtics, the team with just a little bit more grit on the defensive end, a team that's dealing with a few less injuries at the right time than the Miami Heat. I mean, Jimmy Butler, like we said, I don't know. This isn't the Jimmy Butler that I saw last round, at least. I thought Victor Oladipo stepped up when he needed to, but if Tyler Hero's not on that court and Jimmy Butler's not playing at 100%, this Boston Celtics team and the game plan that they have to defend around the perimeter is very, very interesting. I agree with Isaiah. I think we're going 7 games, but I might be taking the other side of the coin. I might be taking the Boston Celtics in Game 7 just for some reason on the road in Miami, crushing dreams left and right. That might be the way that I have to go right here.
It's not crazy.
It hurts.
It's not crazy. It's definitely
a
strong possibility. Yeah. I mean, they do have the 2 best players in the series. So
stop. Stop.
Anyways,
and if we went with Gary's prediction, they got the 3 best players in the series. Grant Williams number 2, or Marcus Smart.
Marcus Smart number 2. So, fellas, we gotta talk about this because this is big news over in the NBA community with the NBA draft lottery taking place. I don't know about you both, but I was watching this. Lakers didn't have a pick because their pick was 99% going to end up with the New Orleans Pelicans, but I decided to watch anyways. But we saw the Orlando Magic get the number 1 pick for the 4th time in franchise history, and they've chosen Chris Webber. They've chosen Shaquille O'Neal. They've had plenty of big names every time they have that number 1 pick. But I just want your guys' immediate reactions. Let's start with Gary. Gary, going through this top 14 of the lottery, what surprised you the most? Who became a winner through this NBA draft lottery night?
I really do think, especially for winners, I mean, you got to give it to, I think it's the easy answer, of course. I think it's the Magic. You get literally your pick of the litter. You get literally anybody you would like. And maybe the assumption is they're going to take Chet at number 1. I don't think that's definitely like a thing they are the 100% locked in at this point. They definitely should look around. Jabari Smith is great wing defender, can shoot from out there. You see him as more of like a think like a stretch 4, but like he has that Michael Porter Jr. vibe about him, where if you give him an NBA shot and he can play a little bit better defense than Michael Porter Jr. did. This is a guy who is 17 points a game in college, 43% from 3, 7 rebounds and a block. That's prime, 6'10", 210. He's a good prospect, can shoot the ball. And if anything, that is who else is playing power forward on the Orlando Magic? You have Wagner down there, but you need a guy who can stretch the floor. You need a guy who can play in a modern NBA offense. So maybe your answer is Chet Holmgren. Chet's a defensive monster, but I don't think that I think maybe it's a bad idea if you're the Magic to not look at maybe trading down for a guy that might be available more there, because you have so many options, and because it's going to be really, really sad if the Orlando Magic draft another really skinny, tall dude and he doesn't pan out. I think that would be even sadder than, because I love Chet and I want him to do well, but good Lord, they do not have a good track record with guys of his build and size. So, it's up to them, but I think they have the best, like they're in the driver's seat. They're literally right in the middle. They could do whatever they want. And guys at the top of this board are really sought out by these other NBA teams. You got Portland looking to make a trade for a guy. Maybe that becomes an all-star, but maybe that also becomes a guy in the very front of the draft. Maybe they trade for a guy with the Orlando Magic. Maybe we get the trade machine going. We saw it in the NFL draft. People were just trading people left and right. So why not in the NBA too?
Yeah. And what's interesting is there was a report that came out today in which the Orlando Magic are actually leaning into taking Chet Holmgren with the number 1 pick. So if the draft was to take place today, I would say about 95% that's the prospect that they're going to take with the number 1 pick. I think they're more likely to use that number 1 pick as opposed to trade for some big name out there, because let's face it, the Orlando Magic, regardless of who they trade for, they could trade for LeBron James for all I care, and they still wouldn't probably end up being a playoff team in the Eastern Conference. That's just my opinion.
Ooh, that's a take. I'm like just saying. I'm just saying. It's
the Magic.
I mean, who do they really have out there aside from Mo Wagner and a couple other role players.
Yeah, Franz Wagner and Mo and Franz, and then they got Jalen Suggs, but that ain't. It's not. I don't know. It's not hot. I'll tell you that right now.
So Isaiah, Gary says the instant winner becomes Orlando Magic. They're in that driver's seat. I think that's a really good point. When you look at this top 14, I mean, who's the winner for you when it comes to that?
Because of what you just said, Dev, being that it's the Magic and they're so far off. It's hard for me to call them the winners at this point because they're really not going to win anything like anytime soon, I don't think. So
fair.
I think I would move right under them, right with the OKC Thunder. Like, this is their plan. Their plan, racking up the draft picks, getting the young rookies, and they actually have a pretty decent foundation. Not that I don't think they're going to win anything anytime soon, but I do trust them as an organization a little bit more to get a good core of guys before they trade them off. But I trust them to get that good core first before they trade their championships away. And if they get
okay, I just got that. I'm sorry. That was a good one.
Yeah. So you got of course, and the thing is, if the Magic are taking Chet Holmgren, no offense to him, I hope he does well, but his bust likability just went up by a long shot. So that just leaves the Thunder to draft maybe somebody like Pablo or Jabari Smith, which either fit I kind of like. You already have a pretty decent core, and you're just building the foundation for LeBron James. So the Magic probably not going to get LeBron James. They probably can't win with him. But you know what? If LeBron stays on course, at least close to what he is, the Thunder might. So I think it was a big win for them, but they're not done. This is the true process. They're playing like NBA 2K, like they're doing an experiment right now with getting all these draft picks, and they're going to see what they could do. They're making spaghetti like the Italian style. They take pasta, they throw it against the wall, and whatever sticks, I mean, if it sticks, it's done. So that's what they're going to be doing. So
yeah,
I do have a question for you, Devin, because we had a talk about this specific NBA player a couple of months ago. I believe it actually wasn't even a couple months. Yeah, maybe it was, maybe 2 at this point. At the end of our season wrap up, we talked a bit about Jalen Green and how he has been able to come alive again in the second half of the season. A lot of people are mocking the Houston Rockets to take Paolo Banchero out of Duke. He has had some struggles defensively. I'm just worried from both of you guys, really. Paolo seems like an amazing player on the offensive end. He has a little bit of defense lacking, especially for a guy his size, maybe some effort questions there. I think offensively, we have no question he's amazing, but does that really fit in on that Houston Rockets team? I don't know. I just thought about that. Maybe just throwing it out there to you guys. Yeah. This Rockets team needs a guy on the defensive end to actually do some stuff for them. And if they just get another shot creator, I don't see it going so well. I think they honestly fell into a weird spot at the draft. Because I really like Powell. I think he's a great player, but I don't think that the Houston Rockets are a particularly good fit for him.
Yeah, so I'll tell you right now that I actually already have done, signed, sealed, delivered, and scheduled. I have a 2022 NBA draft lottery mock draft, so it's only going to mock the top 14 picks. And I think without a doubt, the top 3 prospects are going to be Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith Jr., and Paolo Banchero. Yeah. I think you're exactly right, Gary, where you said the Houston Rockets are in a really weird place because they have to take whichever of the 3 guys falls to the number 3 spot, right? So you're 100% right. He lacks defensively, and this is something I put in his segment, that he lacks in 2 departments, Banchero does. He lacks defense, and he lacks efficiency from 3-point range. And where he is efficient is that shot creation, where all of a sudden you're talking about he's efficient from the post, and he's efficient from shooting from the perimeter as well, from what I've seen this past season. Banchero's interesting. I think when you're talking about a guy like Jalen Green that is going to require so much ball usage, Banchero becomes sort of not as much of a complementary piece, if that makes sense. But you also have the need for a big guy that can play the forward position because, lo and behold, Christian Wood is one of multiple guys that are going to be sought after in free agency this offseason for the Houston Rockets. Not saying that Banchero is going to go in and play the 5 per se, but this might be a smaller lineup for the Houston Rockets. So there is a need for a guy with size such as Banchero. I just don't see them taking a Shaedon Sharpe, and I don't see them taking a Jaden Ivey because those are both wing guards, point guard players. And then all of a sudden you're talking about the next best forward player being Keegan Murray. I just don't see it personally. I don't know if Isaiah feels differently, but I do still have Banchero mocked at the number 3 position.
Yeah, because there's really not much. I mean, the one thing, like you mentioned about the potential deficiencies in Banchero's game, you go to a team that has the time to help you hash that out, and that would be the Houston Rockets. I mean, they have a nice young core, but they still haven't quite found their identity yet. I mean, we don't know who's going to really lead this team yet. We're going to see. We have an idea, but I think Banchero would be in the right place for him. Even if he goes to, even if the Thunder takes him, I think he'll be in a good spot. But I think either way, he's going to be a fine fit, and the Rockets have the time to develop him a little bit. And he might be a star. I mean, there's just some guys that just have a certain look, and you see their build, and then I don't know. He just strikes me as one of those guys that I'm really going to keep my eye on. Honestly, out of the top 3, like he's the guy I'm really watching because, like if his main thing is defense and a couple little nicks and ticks, like those things could be worked out, I think, and we'll just have to see what happens. So.
I'll tell you.
Go for it.
No, go ahead. No, go for it, Gary. Go for it.
No, I was just gonna say. I think for the Rockets' point, it's a little slippery slope towards the end of the draft because, or to where they are in the draft. Goodness, I cannot speak because the next 2 guys that a lot of people are mocking. I don't know what you have on your thing. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, Devin. Have you posted it yet? I've
Thursday morning.
Thursday. Okay. Well, check that out. I'm gonna be looking at. I'm gonna be put the little notification bell on the Athletes Hub Twitter channel. Twitter, YouTube, Twitter, Twitter,
everything
YouTube.
and anything.
I feel like an old man now. The Twitter, YouTubes, and the Facebooks. But you got guys like Jaden Ivey, they're knock neck shit on Sharpe. I'm just worried about them from a draft standpoint. Do they look to trade up or trade back just so that they can get a guy that maybe fits their timeline a little bit better and fits the core of their team? And that's I think the most interesting thing for me right now.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I thought, without a doubt, the biggest winner of this NBA draft, the lottery night, was the Sacramento Kings. I don't know if you guys caught this on the percentages, but this was a team that was projected to get the number 7 pick. And when their number didn't come up for number 7, they instantly jumped up to a top 4 pick. So they were projected the whole entire time. They were thinking, we're going to be number 7, we're going to be number 8, so we're around that 8 range. And then they would get a ticket to be a top 4 pick. So, yes, they get the number 4, but all of a sudden you're talking about jumping up to taking a guy like a Jaden Ivey, taking a guy like a Shaedon Sharpe. They get their pick between the 2 prospects themselves. I'll tell you right now, from my perspective, I have the Sacramento Kings taking Shaedon Sharpe. I think he's a much better fit, and I think the Sacramento Kings, based on what their front office has told us, that since acquiring Domantas Sabonis, they are in win now mode. They've already used a top 10 pick in the 2021 draft on Davion Mitchell. They already had De'Aaron Fox average over 28 points per game after Sabonis was acquired at the trade deadline. And so this is a team that needs to win now. What better way to go in and move up to that number 4 pick as opposed to the number 7 pick? I think it's interesting if they trade the pick. I think it's interesting if they take a wing player such as a Shaedon Sharpe. I thought this was a big win for the Sacramento Kings. I thought, lo and behold, I thought the OKC Thunder, I thought the Orlando Magic, and the Sacramento Kings were all 3 very big winners on the lottery night.
Oh, 100%. I would worry. The only thing I would worry about is the Kings selecting another guard. They had a little problem with that logjam last season. Then they traded away Tyrese Halliburton, so we don't even need to worry about that anymore. So, maybe you're 100% correct. Maybe they get Shaedon Sharpe, and he's absolutely perfect fit for them. I did want to point out at the 6th pick, the Indiana Pacers might just find themselves getting basically Pascal Siakam 2.0 and Keegan Murray. Fantastic offensive player, 23 points a game, 38% from 3, 8.5 rebounds, 2 blocks to put on top of that. Forward out of Iowa, 6'8", 215. And what more did the Pacers need than a guy who can just score, but is actually not a guard? Like, that's their main problem. They're loaded up on these guards. They trade for Tyrese Halliburton, and other than Miles Turner, they really don't have, an impressive prospect on that end of the court. So you get the 6th pick, you get a guy like him, and maybe you never know. The Indiana Pacers are tricky. You never know. They're like 30 wins one season, and the next season you're like, oh, they're the 7th seed. How did we? What? How? Or then a couple of years ago, we're like, they might miss the playoffs, and then they're the 4th seed. And we're like, what?
Yeah, they're interesting. And Keegan Murray was the nation's top scorer with 822 points total last season. He's definitely a nice player to keep your eye on. And I thought you were looking at the spoilers. I thought you were logging in and seeing my draft.
No, that's just who I have. Right,
I actually have Keegan Murray going number 6 to the Indiana Pacers. So ironically enough,
great minds.
No, I like it a lot.
Yeah,
I got a whole list right here, my man. I did my own, but like I didn't. You put it up, and I was like, all right, just go down the list. Who should they get? Bang, 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 bang. Okay, cool. I don't think Portland stays at 7 though. If that was that's my opinion.
From what I've seen in reports, it sounds like it's basically now or never when it comes to Damian Lillard. He has 2 more years under contract. He's 31 years old right now. So this is basically the only time that they can use this pick at number 7 as leverage to go get a player to go contend now in the Western Conference. But if you're Portland, I don't know what prospect you can take to convince Damian Lillard to stay there for the rest of his career, because at one point in time, Damian Lillard is saying, I would never leave. I never want to switch on teams. I never want to go chase rings. And now he's been we talked about this last week. He was like, oh, I'd love to play with Giannis. Oh, I love like all these other players, yada, yada. It sounds like the narrative's starting to change a lot.
It's interesting. I love the NBA players do the kiss ass tour where they just go around to the media when their season's over and basically just kiss ass to whatever franchise they can. Yeah. They're like, I think we saw it. LeBron even did it this year, talking about Sam Presti. Every now and then these guys just like, I want to get in my little bag. I want to make some media headlines. Why not? I talk about how great Giannis is. Yeah. And then we're sitting here for 3.5 months talking about Portland possibly doing something. Yeah. Puts pressure on the organization. And maybe we see Damian Lillard not in Portland Trailblazers jersey, but I don't think that's this season. It's possibly in another. I don't know. What do you think about that, Isaiah? With him being in New York as a potential landing spot.
I'll take it. But look, if I'm Portland, you take your prospect and you try to trade for more with Damian Lillard. Maybe the Sacramento Kings are an interesting option for you if they're truly serious. I don't know how that would work out fit-wise. But to answer, because you just mentioned what prospect could truly convince Dame time to stay, mm-hmm. I think even if you got the top pick, I don't think there's a prospect that you could convince Damian Lillard to stay. Because, look, it's not about getting to the playoffs. I'm sure they could put together a couple of pieces and make a run for the 7th or the 8th seed. But we're talking about winning a potential NBA Finals for Damian Lillard. We want to see him in that position, and he's not going to get there with Portland. And like the same thing, like for example, the Sacramento Kings, they're going to go ahead and they're going to try to compete, and that's great. I mean, I like that kind of attitude as opposed to like, oh, we're going to tank. And so I like that they're going for it. But in the Western Conference with the big dogs that are in there, the Memphis Grizzlies, the Golden State Warriors, like, do we really think you have a real shot? I mean, sure, if you're in there, anything can happen. So no, I don't see anything. So they have to take a prospect and they have to deal Damian Lillard. I know they don't want to. I know you don't want to swallow that pill, but you have no other choice. You're not winning an NBA Finals unless you somehow pull off a miracle trade and get like a LeBron or a Kevin Durant or something, or something crazy like that. It's not going to happen. So, and even with LeBron, I don't even know if that would happen. So
and even if that, like I was going to say, even if that does happen, look at the Nets. They get Kyrie, KD, and James Harden, and look, that just blows up in their face. It's this NBA. There's nothing is given, everything is earned.
Yeah,
that should just be the slogan, especially on trade deadline week.
Yeah, and at the risk of opening a can of worms right now that I feel like I can't unclose, I want to ask Isaiah just one question. The New York Knicks have the number 11 pick. Is there a prospect that you're sort of eyeing outside that top 10 that you want the New York Knicks to go and take? What do you sort of think the Knicks need to do? What position do they need at least to go after?
Listen, every time I do anything, set any type of expectations for the Knicks in the NBA draft, it just never pans out the way that I want. Aside from RJ Barrett, and it's kind of worked out how I wanted. Like, it's the best I could have, hoped for. But if you're the Knicks, I need to see Julius Randle get traded first before I even think about it. But look, we have enough guards. Okay, if we could get, I don't know. I mean, we have so many pieces, and it's like we just moved into a new place, and we got like the kitchen stuff in the bathroom and the bathroom stuff in the. We just don't know what to do.
These analogies with you: the spaghetti first, and now the kitchen utensils, the bathroom, and the kitchen.
I didn't have breakfast, man. So look. I think I guess I would like to see a big man because I assume Mitchell Robinson's going because they didn't trade him. They should have traded Mitchell Robinson. That was the most ridiculous thing. Anyway, besides the point, I assume we go for a big man, but I don't know.
Have you had a chance? I know, Devin, you definitely have him probably in your mock. I at least have him in my top 14. Have you gotten a chance to look at possibly acquiring a guy like Mark Williams out of Duke, big defensive center? 7 feet tall, 7'7" wingspan, kind of fills that Mitchell Robinson itch that you love to scratch.
He's listed at 7 feet tall.
Oh, I just froze up.
Who froze up?
You seem okay.
I did. Sorry, no, keep going.
I was just gonna say he's listed at 7 foot. I have Mark Williams going down to Charlotte, because Charlotte's going to be without Montrezl Harrell because he's hitting free agency, and their center right now is listed as Mason Plumlee, so they could improve right there. Because I have the New York Knicks actually taking a different big man. How about maybe a pure center out of Memphis by the name of Jalen Duren? I thought that was going to be interesting. There's, concerns that he might not be as efficient offensively, but defensively, this man blocks shots. He's a big guy. Last season with Memphis, he ended up being one of the best pure centers. I think he's the best pure center in this draft class if you're excluding Chet Holmgren. But Isaiah put it best. Mitchell Robinson's going to be a free agent. There might be talks about Julius Randle being moved this offseason in a trade. So all of a sudden, Isaiah's perfectly on the money. You need a big man in this draft. You're probably not going to end up trading this pick because you're probably not going to get much value out of it. I like Duren right here, but Mark Williams is another great name that I have just 2 picks later. So it's really on one side of the coin or the other.
It's funny. I did, because honestly, I don't keep up with the college basketball too much, but I did look at Duren, and I saw the comparison to Bam Adebayo. All of a sudden, we have the next Jimmy Butler and RJ Barrett and the next Bam Adebayo. We're the new Miami Heat.
and Isaiah, you know what's funny too?
What did I just walk into? I just came back from so long that my screen was frozen, and now all of a sudden he's the next Miami Heat. Who are you talking about?
Said the New York Knicks are the next Miami Heat, he said.
Listen, I was saying, okay, look, let me explain, put some context. I don't know if you heard what I said. Listen, He was talking about Jalen Duren potentially going to the Knicks, and I did look at a little bit about him. I didn't actually have him going to the Knicks. I didn't really think about the prospect, but he was compared to Bam Adebayo. I saw like different comparisons, like his type of player build. So all of a sudden, we have the next Jimmy Butler and RJ Barrett, and the next Bam Adebayo. We're the new Miami Heat.
Notice you always hear people say, "Oh, he's going to be the next Jimmy Butler," but no one ever says they're going to be the next Jaylen Brown. Just wanted to put that out. Just
different play style.
Put that out there.
Play style. The style makes the fight.
Yeah, the first and the second option.
And not everybody can shoot from three like Jaylen Brown. The Jimmy Butler's more of a reachable standard, as opposed to Jaylen Brown.
And Isaiah, I'll tell you one little cliff note on Jalen Duren. 18 years old. He's one of the youngest prospects in this class. So you take him, there's plenty of time before he potentially hits his prime at the next level, right? So I have Duren going number 11. I have Mark Williams going number 13 to Charlotte, but you'll have to stay tuned to check it all out on Thursday when I release my piece. Speaking of pieces, as we get into the conclusion, my good friend Isaiah came out with an opinion piece recently claiming James Harden no longer a superstar, which was a fascinating read. Didn't really think much of it before I actually read the piece, but you read the piece and it's a very compelling case. Isaiah, talk to us a little bit about that piece and where your take sort of comes from.
Yeah, so originally I was going to title it, and I thought it might have been in poor taste, so I changed it. I was going to go the James Harden eulogy because it's the death of a superstar. It's the supernova. It's exploding in space. This is it. It's still going to be beautiful to watch from far. It's still going to, be good on the eyes at times, but it's not functioning the way that it used to, right? That's what happens when a star explodes in space. That's what happens, and that's what has happened to James Harden. And it's at first I was talking about, James Harden is going to get mugged. It was a little bit more disrespectful. This is coming from a place of just realistic expectations. This is just what happens. Not everybody can be LeBron James and play into their late 30s. Now, part of it is on James Harden, fluctuating your weight back and forth. All of a sudden, injuries follow. But hey, things happen like that. And look, a lessened version, even James Harden at superstar level, you cannot really depend on in the playoffs. Yeah. So now, a lessened version, he still has the passing ability to be an effective NBA player. And being a second option behind Joel Embiid, he still has the ability to score. But when I talk about superstar, I'm talking about a guy that you could really depend on, put everything on his back, and expect an NBA Finals run. We're talking like guys like Luka Doncic. Like he's the entire reason we had any hope in the Mavericks winning NBA Finals. Steph Curry, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Jimmy Butler, guys like that. Listen, James Harden is not on that same level anymore. Okay, he's not that guy. And it's a shame because Joel Embiid really, and I wanted to highlight in that article too, because the way Joel Embiid handled this season with the Ben Simmons situation and everything, it has to be like appreciated, because I know he's not everybody's cup of tea. He can play dirty sometimes. He's very outspoken. He's not even my favorite player, but the way he handled this season and kept the 76ers afloat and came into the series with the Miami Heat in Game 3 and fought with a broken face, like it's a shame that there wasn't enough help for him in the NBA Finals. And it's all it is. It's not even bashing James Harden. This is just realistic expectations to look at moving forward. And I think he needs to take his player option, because I don't think he'll ever see that type of money again, unless he goes to a smart market team that's desperate to sell tickets. Yeah. And even then, like the NBA Finals championship run, his meal ticket is Joel Embiid, and that's it.
Question for you, Isaiah. We saw Daryl Morey probably get a little bit more flack than I personally think you should on Twitter and just in NBA discourse in general for trading Ben Simmons for James Harden. Of course, at the time we were like, great, this is awesome, good for him. But is he to blame? Would you blame him for this, or would you just kind of like that he did what he had to do kind of thing?
He did what he had to do. He made the best of a bad situation. It just happened a year too late, basically. Because remember when James Harden was still with Houston, there was talk about Simmons for Harden, with the Rockets, and it just didn't happen at that time. But now, Daryl Morey, he went and got his guy. I did the show with Philip Stiefel, right? And he was talking about how how is Daryl Morey a good manager? He said, because all he's ever done is trade for James Harden like twice. Like, all he's ever done. So I'm like, I don't really, I think that's a little extreme. I think he's a pretty good GM. He did the best. He made the best out of a bad situation. You had to roll the dice. And even still moving forward, if Ben Simmons was never going to play on the 76ers, he made the right move. It's just that was the best you could do. This was your best chance, but it is not enough. And it has drastically decreased since you acquired James Harden. So
Yeah.
I don't blame him so much. I mean, that's just basketball. This is how it happens. So,
fellas, as we get in sort of the closing minutes of this show, Gary, I want to start with you because I posed this question in our group chat. And I think it's an interesting one. I'm going to give you 4 players. You tell me which one is most likely to win just one NBA championship before they retire and they set off in the sunset. You get James Harden, like Isaiah just said.
Mm-hmm.
You can get Russell Westbrook. Who knows if he's going to be on the Lakers? Maybe they figure it out in LA. Maybe he gets shipped off somewhere else where he has a chance. You get Damian Lillard, who let's see what his future's like in Portland. Let's see where he gets moved to eventually as well. Or you get the oldest player out of all of them. You get Chris Paul, who's coming off of one of the best regular season performances from the Phoenix Suns. So between those 4 players, who is the most likely to win one or possibly their only NBA championship before they retire?
So I loved what you just said about him, Isaiah, but I'm going to have to go with James Harden.
Ooh.
And the reason for this is not because I think the person leading the team is going to be James Harden. I just think that personally around him, his shot, just from a standpoint of he's got Joel Embiid, the evolution, and see what happens with Tyrese Maxey here in the next few seasons. If Harden can just figure out how to operate as a third, sometimes fourth option, maybe more as a playmaker than an actual scorer, figure out how to actually move around on offense instead of just standing in one spot, hoping that an isolation score happens from another one of the multi-million-dollar paid players. I'm looking at you, Tobias Harris. This is a guy who has an MVP candidate on his team. He has Tyrese Maxey, a future all-star, and he might not be in his prime, but he has the best chance, at least right now. I'm not saying, give it 5 years. Maybe we see Russell Westbrook as a bench player on another team, or maybe like a fringe or like a starter, in his like 37, 38, 9-year-old season. Damian Lillard still has a couple years ahead of him where he could be a good first option on a decent team or a great third option on a championship team. It all depends on where the cards fall and how the dice play out. But I do think that right now, James Harden is probably in the best situation to find himself in the NBA Finals and win a chip. I'm not saying he's going to be the star, but, he has those pieces around him to possibly do it.
All right, Isaiah, let's shift over to you. Between those 4 players, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Damian Lillard, Chris Paul, who do you have as the best chance to win that NBA title?
So this is how I was going to answer it. I was going to say, well, I'll tell you one thing. It's not James Harden and it's not Russell Westbrook. But Gary makes a really good point. If we're going with what we have right now, yeah, James Harden probably still has the most realistic chance. But I'm more compelled to go. And Damian Lillard, you could really make a strong case depending on where he lands. But if the rumors aren't to trade him and he is going to fall off, I think the guy is Chris Paul, believe it or not, because he's just the guy that you could literally fit on any team and he can fit. It doesn't matter where you fit him. It doesn't matter if there's another point guard. It doesn't matter what it is. He's the type of guy that could just fit in and gel a team together still. It's not going to happen in Phoenix, I don't think, but if he can be a fraction of what he is, he won't be the star. He won't be the guy leading the way, just like James Harden wouldn't be. It would be Chris Paul, depending where he goes, depending where he decides to go in 2 years. Now, if you say which one could lead their team to the NBA Finals, that's where I would have to go a guy like Damian Lillard. I think the one with the least chance is Russell Westbrook. That's really bad to say. But, yeah, that's just the team. But Chris Paul, for sure, I'm going to go with that. Just based on where you could stick him, anywhere.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm personally going to go with Damian Lillard, though. I think his age on the younger side, 31 years old. I don't think it'll ever happen in Portland per se, but I think if we're talking about what's going to come in the next 5 years or so, obviously by that time Chris Paul is going to be out of the league. James Harden, who knows what his body frame will even look like 5 years from now, and Russell Westbrook, what's going to be happening with Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook might be playing overseas in the next 5 years at this rate. So who knows? I'm just saying. But Damian Lillard, I have this vision in the next 5 years. I said this last week. I said Damian Lillard over in Milwaukee with Giannis Antetokounmpo. Just something about that NBA 2K style of play is just so intriguing to where I like those odds. I love those odds, but I don't think it'll happen in Portland. And I think if everything stuck the same, Gary's right 100%. James Harden is in the best situation. I think Isaiah's right. If you're talking about a guy who – you can plug him anywhere and he has a chance to win pretty much anywhere he goes. It's 100% Chris Paul. Damian Lillard probably for the longevity has the best case to win an NBA championship.
Oh, yeah. If he goes to Milwaukee, that's it. Yeah.
That's going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
That is
Dev, I got to tell you, though, the Westbrook, when you can't, like, hurt people. I get it.
Yes.
I'm hurt, Gary. I'm hurt real bad.
Hurt people, my guy. I get it. I know I do see, though, Russell Westbrook probably has an Allen Iverson-esque end to his NBA career, which is sad. But, I couldn't agree with you more, especially considering Damian Lillard. He's 31. That's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. But, fellas, that's 20 episodes in the books and hopefully a lot more than 20 to go. We're here every single week. We're going to try to lock down times together, but be sure to check us out at theathleteshub.org. Like I said, Isaiah just came out with a piece of his own. I've got a piece coming up. Gary comes out with content left and right. Awesome pieces from all three of us, along with the rest of our team. So be sure to check that out once again at theathleteshub.org. And we will see you guys next week.
That's right.